Welcome to episode 6 of the Leeds Rhinos Podcast, and it's a Thursday, which means it's the Q&A edition. I'm delighted to be joined by Dave Ferguson, the lead physiotherapist here at the Rhinos. My name's Phil Daly. I'm the head of media and PR, and we've got some great questions from you guys that we'll go through later on, and we've got some answers from the people in the know here at the Rhinos. Fergie, great to have you on our Q&A edition. First of all, you've become a bit of an internet sensation on Instagram. You jumped in to save Mick from himself the other week there against Wakefield. Are you enjoying your newfound fame?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And then, yeah, I guess I am a little bit, but it's more. I feel like it's got a little bit out of hand, but it's been good. I guess it's highlighted a key issue in a good way, so I'll take the positives out of it, really.
On a serious note, I mean, we talked about it at the time when it happened, but really just show that the amount of care that you guys in the medical department take of the players, both every day in training, but particularly during games.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's probably like the biggest positive. Hopefully, it's highlighted, what our role is, and it's slightly different to sort of the care you might receive away from a sporting club. We spend a lot of time with the players, and you do develop relationships with them alongside it, and it's part of that and sharing within that the care that we have from a medical point of view, and hoping that everything we're trying to do is in their best interest from a health point of view.
And you could see in that instance, you've got to keep a calm head on and keep assessing the situation. We saw on Saturday over at Salford the injury that Brodie Croft suffered over there, the head knock, and the amount of time and care that it took to get Brodie off the field. Play was stopped for quite a while there. The Salford medical team were there. There was NHS staff on the sideline waiting. Talk us through that process. How we see the head injury, how quickly and what's happening there.
Yeah, so I guess no two concussions are the same, and just because in Brodie's instance, it can look, I guess, quite severe in the case of the pitch. You can also have a relatively normal recovery. So what we're looking for with any concussion is to essentially safely assess and remove the player as quickly as we can. In Brodie's instance, it was difficult for us to be able to definitively rule out a potential injury to his neck. So that's one of the key elements in terms of like how we can or can't get someone off of the pitch. Because we couldn't roll that out in place on the pitch, then we have to go through a process of extricating them from the pitch, in which we triple immobilise a player. So we use head blocks and straps to make sure that they can't move, because the worst case scenario, if they do have a potential neck injury and they get sort of motion and movement around the neck, is that it can lead to quite severe, ramifications, probably the best word for that, down the line. So what we're looking to do is, can we safely and effectively assess that? And if we can or can't, then how are we best placed to remove the player from the pitch there? And we're really thankful for, and I think it shows a bit of the spirit in rugby league, but we are thankful for the help that we receive from the Salford medical team.
And presumably you're talking to the player the whole way through their process. We all know the bravado element of it there. No, I want to get up, I'm fine, and all that sort of thing. But players generally, they understand that you're taking them through for their own safety.
Yeah, definitely. I think we were really lucky that Brodie was, pretty receptive to that, and it's not always the same, and that's no fault of the players. We're not ignorant to the fact that they've more than likely, or in this case, like definitely have just had a concussion. A concussion is not just this loss of consciousness. Like, people are going to show potential behavioural changes in the short term. They can potentially be more aggressive or more emotional, and it's about sort of in the best possible way, and like the education that there is around the game and around this topic is hopefully helping this. But players have a bit more of an awareness, and we are constantly speaking to Brodie at that point, and we're explaining, that it's part of the process. We have to take you off in this manner until we can safely assess you in a better position away from the pitch. And like I say, we were lucky that, like, as Brodie was coming around, everything was all good. He was, responsive and receptive to that for us, and it helped make things go pretty smoothly.
And the other big injury during the game that needed treatment and assessment was the cut to Matt Frawley's hand. If you've watched the behind the game, the excellent work that Ram Film's done for this week's game, Fergie was wearing a mic for the game, so you get to hear the assessment pretty much straight away there. And you've looked at the hand straight away, and you've called for the doctor to come and have a look at it.
Yeah. There's not much of an assessment from me on that one, I don't think. But there's in terms of cuts and wounds, there's some things that I would feel comfortable, safely trying to patch up on the field of play in sort of as quick a manner as possible. And unfortunately for Falls in that instance, it wasn't something that I could look after quickly. So we had to take him off for a little bit of a fair investigation and to get some stitches in there. And fair play to him, he toughed it out. And it probably highlights just how much a lot of players do go through on, a relatively weekly basis. Realistically, the game is tough, and it probably doesn't always get emphasised just how tough it is in terms of those instances where it's not that you're playing through bruised and you are playing through a little bit battered, and you're fully aware of that, and you're making a tough decision to go, do you know what, I'm going to go back out there and do this for my teammates and for my team.
I'm presuming it's not just the stitches and stemming the flow of blood and all that sort of thing. Infection, big thing you want to guard against.
Yeah, precisely that. So anything like that with a significant wound, one of the biggest risks is infection. So we need to make sure that we can properly irrigate the wound and have it closed in a way that's going to prevent any potential further infection. Depending on the size of the wound and where it is, the players might get sort of prophylactic antibiotics. So they'll be taking some drugs to try and help prevent an infection starting, essentially. So yeah, it's probably a very simple thing to call a cut or a wound, but there's a lot that goes into it, and that's probably a lot of it's addressed and managed, by our club doctor, who's done a really good job with stitching that up, and he's got a really nice tidy stitch job there.
We'll hear a bit more from Fergie later on. I've got some questions. We asked you to send in your questions, and you've done just that. This week, we also extended it to our Reddit community, and we had some great questions there. A couple of them on the kit, and we'll hear from the man himself, Glyn Bell, to give us the answers on those now. Our next questions are a couple of questions about our kit, so we've gone right to the source on this one. Our recruitment manager, Glyn Bell, well known to Rhinos fans, is going to give us the lowdown on these next two questions. The first one came from Reddit, and it's from Captain Mexicano, and he asks, which player consistently has the cleanest kit? Do you dob them into the coach for more intense training as they aren't trying hard enough? Well, Glyn, what's the answer on that one?
Well, the actual training kit, I don't launder it. It's not laundered at the club, so I couldn't really give you an answer. It's down up to their washing machine. Playing kit, usually pretty similar. It just depends on the situation and the pitch. Obviously, last year at Cassif, I don't know if anybody noticed, we had torrential downpour, and that actually was a jet wash job. After 2 washes, it still looked like grey, so I ended up jet washing that. So, all pretty similar. Thank you.
And then the next one, someone who's not a fan of our kit designs with Oxen, comes from Young Gods, another one from Reddit. Who makes the decisions on the kits, says Young Gods. The designs are constantly poor. Well, I disagree with their Young Gods. A lot of time and effort goes in there, but go on. We have had a way better than the last few years' offerings in the past. Seems like other teams have much better designs and colourways for away strips, etc. Well, I know, Glyn, you're an aficionado of the kits. What's your thoughts on that one initially?
I think it's an hard job. It isn't a brilliant job. If you make traditional Leeds kits all the time, no one appreciates that. So you've got to change it up. I think they do come up with some good ideas. And colourways, I love the 2011 pink kit. I think that was a groundbreaker, especially when we wore the pink shorts, which weren't available to buy. But I suppose my favourite has got to be the 2015 treble kit. I think it was a superb shirt. Bit of Leeds on it in the middle, so that would be my favourite kit. But you better the devil you are, the better devil you are with your kit. So it's a bit Marmite. So no, it can't please everybody.
Yeah, and what people probably don't appreciate is that jigsaw to try and get all the opposition clubs we've got to play against, all the different colours, and what we in terms of our sponsors and keeping everyone happy. Yeah,
well, the sponsors are a massive part of the obviously. People go on about the amount of sponsors, but they don't realise they bring a massive amount in helping the club run well, and we've got to obviously accommodate those. And we don't make the calls on away games. We try to get as much seen. So if you have 3 kits and 2 are like what we'd use for away, we do ask for the RFL, so we get equal wear. So if you do buy a shirt, we hope to get as much as out of that shirt as possibly we can with RFL permission.
Great answer there from Glyn, and I agree with that. 2011 away kit is pretty memorable. In Glyn's kit room he has down at the stadium, he's actually got a picture of Danny Badiris wearing that kit, so I think that's why it's his favourite, and signed from Bedsy there to Glyn, so that's always got a special place in his heart. We were talking before the question there about the injuries on Saturday. One of them was Cameron Smith. Just talk us through the process. Obviously, we said earlier in the week that he was going to see specialists, and the decision made. That's now been confirmed that he's going to have an operation next week. But from the moment sort of Cam's come off the pitch there, and it's clear he's not going to come back onto the field. Is that something you used to like park for the game and revisit it afterwards, and then obviously scans and seeing specialists and things like that? What's that journey?
Yeah, so I guess a big part of how we make a decision, and particularly in the acute stages when we're at a game, is we're lucky in the instance that we get to see what's gone on. So I guess if you're typically to go see a physio or a doctor anywhere away from like this world of sport, they don't get to see what's happened to you. You're having to describe it, and they're trying to piece together a bit of a puzzle in that conversation. But we'll tend to see what's gone on. I'll have a really clear report from the player. So Cam's done a lot of that himself. He's felt something around his ankle that he knew was pretty severe, and he's essentially started taking himself off, which is like, it works just as good. We speak about those relationships. Like, Cam's an experienced player who knows his body really well. Like, I'm not there to tell him that he needs to continue on there. Like, I know that if he's doing that, which is very rare, then something serious is probably going on. We'll then look after it as best we can in the short term. So we'll usually, like, you'll see a lot of players putting boots and using crutches to just offload the area as much as we can, dependent on what assessment has been done. So part of the assessment that will go on whilst they're inside. So my colleague Patrick, who did a really good job, like, he'll go inside and have an assessment of the sort of foot and ankle there and see how severe the injury is. Like, is it something that means, Cameron's done for the game, or Cameron's done for potentially longer, or is it something that we think he can potentially try to get back out there with? In this instance, it was obviously something where we knew relatively quickly that it was going to be quite severe, definitely done for the game and potentially longer. So we'd place them, in a boot and use crutches to try and offload and be protective of that area as much as we can.
Yeah, mentioned there, Patrick. Pat was just telling me on pitch side there that his parents over in the States listen to the podcast. So great to have you on board. Your son's doing a fantastic job here with the Rhinos, great part of our team, and long may that continue. In terms of then the surgery for Cam and then the prognosis going forward, we've said 8 to 10 weeks. You're confident that can all sort of go according to plan? Yeah,
definitely. So obviously, like any injury, there's varying grades of the injury. So if we were to move it from like a scale of like not so severe to really severe, Cam's been unfortunate that his is a lot closer to the like quite severe end. And I guess without going too deep into it, there's a normal ankle sprain which probably a lot of people have had, and it'll swell up and it'll go away, and it can be done as quickly as 24 hours, or it can be a few weeks, or it can be longer, and they can range to quite severe. The type of injury that Cam's had is higher up in the ankle, and it's between the two sort of shin bones. Now, the best way I can describe this is if you imagine those two shin bones sit on top of a wedge, the ligaments that hold that together, when you put weight on the leg, the wedge separates the bones apart. So if you have a significant enough injury to those ligaments, every time you're trying to put weight on the leg, they essentially become unstable because the bones are becoming pushed apart, and that's why it's difficult to rehabilitate sometimes without the option of surgery. So what the surgery is designed to do is to essentially stabilize that joint, allow the ligaments to heal by using, a lot of surgeries will use different things, but it's either a tightrope or a screw or a synthetic ligament to try and pull those things together, and then you're offloaded for a period of time while everything sort of heals up, and we're trying to reduce that instability around the two shin bones. So if you imagine them sort of sitting side by side, it'd be like pushing two pencils apart at the bottom, but we're trying to, the idea of the surgery is to hold those together.
Yeah, I suppose you see every injury being different and presenting in different ways. For those who are watching the Hull KR game the other night, Michael Lewis goes down, he gets his ankle stripped. Presumably the physios there assessing that he's in a different place on that scale, and even though he was hobbling around out there, he was still able. He wasn't going to do presumably any more damage than was already occurred.
Yeah, so it's probably a good example. Like this is where there's a vast scale in between these things, and at that time, probably Mikey himself and I'm guessing that their medical staff were feeling that this was something he could continue on in that position, and he showed a lot of bravery and toughness, I guess, to keep doing that. And it sounds like from some of the media reports, I guess, that's probably not been as severe as potentially it could have been, which is really a big positive for those guys, and I guess another good outcome there. So it probably just highlights how you can have these injuries and they can be on like a really severe scale or on a really minor scale. And I guess that a lot of the ones on the more minor scale you probably don't hear about as much, is probably the best way of putting it, because there's not going to be, I guess, a bit of a press release about how long at time someone's going to miss. I'd say there's a lot of people week to week probably carrying things that realistically they aren't made, I guess, publicly aware.
Yeah. Great, Fergie. We'll get a few more questions coming up. So we've got some more questions that have come into us. And this one came from Gregory. And it was a bit of an unusual one, but we found just the man in the Rhinos camp to answer the question. Our next question comes from Gregory, or it might be Adam. He's got a different name on the email from his actual email address. So I sense a bit of a setup here. But he asks, I own a farm and just wondering, what's everyone's favourite farm animal? Well, what you don't know, Gregory, is we've got an expert on staff to answer this very question. And I'm pleased to introduce our resident farmer, Tom Holroyd. Tom, your favourite farmyard animal?
Mine personally is a pig. I've reared pigs on my family farm, but yeah, I know Cooper likes his cows, following on from his interview.
Any particular breed of pig that you've particularly got a soft spot for?
No, I like the middle whites. I get them off my mate who breeds them. So yeah, I've always stuck with a large white or a middle white.
Thanks, Tom. That answers that question. We'll leave you to get back to training. Great answer, Tom. And now we know what your favourite farmyard animal is. Tick that off the questions list now. Next question came from John Hodgson, and John asked, would Leeds be in favour of the NRL getting involved in Super League and Super League changing its name to NRL Europe or something similar to differentiate itself from all the other Super Leagues across the other sports in the UK and Europe? Good question, John. A bit beyond my pay scale, and I guess yours, Fergie, to take the entire club into another business. But I have been here long enough to, when I first started here, we actually played in Super League Europe. It was part of a global world competition. We had Super League Australia, Super League Europe, Super League America, Super League Fiji. Every country had their own Super League business, and we had the World Club Championship for fans who've been supporting the club a bit longer. We remember that crazy summer of '97 where all the NRL, well, it was the Super League teams over there came over and played in England, and we went over to Australia, and it was an interesting exercise, a very costly one. I'm not sure the budgets were quite stretched to that. I think there's a lot that we can learn from the NRL over here. You know, you look what Peter V'landys is doing over with the NRL. There'll be a big focus on it this weekend with the game over in Vegas. And I'm sure there's a lot of contact between clubs over there and clubs over here. But I think we should also have a bit of pride in our own competition and things we've done over here, and how strong we're building our game over here. It's very different from the NRL. They've got a lot more money, but than where we're currently at. But definitely, I think there's certainly a lot of new music around that. And I suspect with the power brokers being in Vegas this weekend, there'll be even more over the coming weeks. So we'll watch the space for that one. I'm sorry, John, I haven't got an answer for that, but I have got a little bit of experience there. And John also asked, do Leeds plan on updating the club crest? And that was also a question that we had from Mark Hughesman. And Mark, similar thing, 30th anniversary of the Rhinos, the birth of the Rhinos in 1997. Will the club be looking to update in the next few years? Great question. It's a big part of our brand is the Leeds Rhinos logo. Let us know what you guys think. We've seen a lot, haven't we, across in recent times, clubs changing their logos. I thought Wigan did a really good job when they changed theirs. They put a lot of time and effort into that. I think if you do change it, you mentioned 30 years, there's got to be a commitment that you're going to make for sort of that period of time. There's a lot of people wandering around Leeds with Leeds Rhinos tattoos, and if you get it wrong, that's a hell of a burden to weigh on your shoulders. So no plans at the moment to answer both of those questions, but it is certainly something we talk about. It's certainly not off the table, but no immediate plans. That's a huge piece of work to change your logo. You've got to work with all your kit providers, and just if next time you hear at AMT Henley, just look around you and how many Rhinos logos there are. Huge cost involved in that. But another one. Watch this space. Ferg, you've obviously been at the Rhinos a couple of years now. Tell us a bit about your journey, where you're from originally, your absolute prowess at karaoke. Bit of a legend when it comes to the old karaoke. But your journey as a physio and how you got to here.
So I'm from Hull.
We won't hold that against you.
And then sort of went through the usual college system and into uni, and sort of landed on physio. Came out and got an opportunity with I guess a bit of a mentor of mine in David O'Sullivan, who's done some work with the club, to start some work with sort of combined with Huddersfield Giants and Halifax at the time. That was 10 years ago now, so quite a while, to be honest. And then from there, I got the opportunity to move into a more like singular full-time role at Hull FC. So moved over to Hull FC and was working there from 2016 in sort of an assistant role through, and then in 2018 sort of into leading role. Did that for a couple of years, and then sort of COVID came around and had a bit of a and again, worked with some really good practitioners. So like Rhys Griffiths was the lead physio there, and learned a great deal from him. And we had like great sort of coaching staff and S&C staff, and Paul Hatton and sort of like Lee Radford, Andy Last. Like I guess I was in a really young phase of my career and learnt a lot about the game and the environment and stuff from them. So like really thankful and appreciative for that opportunity realistically, and I think it put me in good stead. Decided to take a little bit of a break, and me and my now wife, we moved to Dublin for a little while to work in a clinic out there. Sort of COVID landed and it didn't really work out, to be honest, so we ended up coming back. Didn't know much other than rugby league, to be honest, and from a physio point of view when we did come back. So went over to Salford, probably met Brodie Croft a little bit earlier than I would have done if they'd have come here, and then an opportunity came up at Leeds. And I think like throughout my time in rugby league, like just Leeds as an organisation has always been, premier, and like couldn't really turn down any opportunity to sort of be involved. And I've only seen that since I have been here, and just trying to transition into, I guess, like leading a department within that, that's been a little bit difficult, but I've found it like a good challenge, and it's something that I think we're sort of growing into now, and hopefully it's going to continue to pay off moving forward realistically. But been in and around rugby league, and from a physio capacity in, I guess, over 10 years. I'm about a 10-year mark now, so making me feel a bit older than I thought I was before I started that conversation. But
you mentioned Lee Radford there at Hull. Yeah. I imagine he was quite a good character to work alongside. He's doing a fantastic job, isn't he, in rugby union down at Northampton now. Was that a good education for you early in your career?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I saw all sides of rugby league out of Radis. I don't think he'd mind me saying that, but no, I think throughout my time in rugby, I think it's rugby league probably don't get the rap that it deserves. I think from a medical point of view, they do a lot of things really, really well, and there's a lot of really good practitioners, a lot of really good people trying really hard, and I think that you are pushed and you are pressed, and the game is really difficult, and it'll challenge you in ways that you maybe didn't think that it would. But it's been a really, really big factor in my learning as a physio and in my development as a physio, and I think it's only ever put me in good stead. I really do, and I had no qualms about coming back to the game. After I sort of wanted to move away from it and maybe take a break, and I think that you miss the team environment, and you miss that sort of camaraderie, and you do miss sort of like the challenge of like the week to week and trying to prepare people as best as you can for games and stuff. So, but no, I learned a great deal from Lee and Andy and all the coaches there at Hull, and and even more so like once we come to Leeds, I'm surrounded by like good practitioners, and that's across S&C and physio and coaching, and I think it's all been really good. And I know sort of like, I guess Rowan's tenure didn't come to the greatest end, but you learn a lot from different coaches. All coaches have different styles, and I guess all physios have different styles, and it's trying to find your own path within that, and hopefully that's going to come good for us now. And I think, like I say, working with Brad at the moment, I think he's given me a lot of confidence in the way that I want to practice, and been able to push that, and hopefully it's going to give us benefits and pay dividends on the pitch, I guess. So I guess that's where we're all of our yardsticks are measured realistically. But first and foremost, we want to make sure that our players are in as healthy and physically good as possible.
Yeah, you mentioned about people who had an influence on you early doors with Dave O'Sullivan, Doss, as he's known to most people. For those who followed Kevin Sinfield's challenge last year, Doss is we're very fortunate when we're doing the 7-in-7 challenges that Doss is our physio, and that he held Kev together to complete that challenge. And there's so many physios, isn't there, that Doss has worked with over the years, particularly in rugby league, but then who spread out from that he's given chances to start their careers.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think like he's a really interesting fella in that's something that he takes a lot of pride in the way that he thinks. Do you know what I mean? Like he's very like process and business and education minded, and he's good at teaching, and he holds you to account as well. Like I say, I learned a great deal. Like you probably didn't have to take a chance on. You know, like I was fresh out of uni, I guess, a young kid, and he like give me a start, and it probably laid a foundation for everything that's gone on onwards from that. But yeah, I'm probably not the only name that's on a list of people that's had some involvement with him, and I think I can only thank him realistically, because like one, having that start, but two, like the education and being in around the environment, and sort of I guess not pulling any punches as well. Like that went a long way for me, and just managing me in that way, and yeah, sailed along. And I'd probably guess it's moved from, I guess, probably a boss to, like, I'd say I'd probably call him a bit of a mate now, but we'll see.
Yeah. See when he's heard this, maybe that still stays true.
Yeah, he might bring me off.
Next question is another one from Reddit, and this has come from Gary Barlow 0. Oh, Gary, well, I thought he was a Warrington fan, but he's obviously listening in. Fair play to Gary, and we'll only take a minute to answer this question for you. Who's the fastest player at the club? There's probably a couple of contenders for that. One of them's on his way back from injury, Lockie Miller. Yeah. Ash Handley, obviously, pretty rapid out there.
Yeah. You know, we've got a very athletic squad. We've got a lot of fast blokes as well. But I'd say, yeah, our top end guys, it'd be a tight race between Ash and Lockie. I think they're probably the two fastest for me.
And we do a lot of work on sprinting, don't we? I mean, obvious that you get the old tackle shields out and the cones and all that sort of thing, but sprint work, Charlie Venables leads on a lot of that in pre-season, in terms of you'll have seen the guys using the resistance bands and everything else to really work on that sprint technique.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think both our strength and conditioning coaches and Charlie and Adam McGretton, like, they do a great job, and there's a lot of our work designed around that. You know, the game's won and lost on moments, I guess, to a point. Like, and what do I know? I'm physio, but like, it is to a point, and like, you see all these breakaway tries, and you know, you can go as far back as like Ryan Orr winning it in the last minutes, you know, stuff like that. Like, if you've got the engine to do it late in the game and you're fast enough to do it, like, it can make a massive difference for your team. So all the prep and the work that we're putting in is to make the players as fast as possible, and I guess as resilient to be able to run fast continuously and do it again and again and again is the big part of it. But yeah, I think like that's fed into the group we have now, the work that they've done over the past few years, and it's probably the reason we have hopefully a decent chunk of the squad that are pretty quick. Yeah,
it's interesting because you'd think who's the fastest, you know, and that's a core attribute. But coming up soon, we've got a box 2 sponsored by Best Western GB, where Jamie Jones McCann's speaking to Ryan Hall, and it's fascinating. Where Ryan says he hasn't got that out and out speed that he had to score that try in 2015. But now he knows what he needs to do, when he needs to do it. And it's, you know, you mentioned there about Cam knowing his own body. Those senior players know exactly what they need to do and when they need to do it. Yeah, definitely. I think, like, it helps make our job a little bit easier at times. And I guess probably not just mine, but coaches and everything. Like, the development of the players is in them understanding and leading on a lot of the day-to-day and the week-to-week. I guess we're there to facilitate, and there's a lot of talk about that from a physio point of view. We're there to like facilitate, I guess, someone's rehabilitation and guide them along the way, but the work is done by the player, and the players know how hard to push, and they sometimes maybe need a little extra, or sometimes maybe need a little pull back as well. You know, that's for us to try and gauge. But I guess it probably has mirrors across all areas of the game, and you know, it depends if you listen to podcasts where people speak about coaching and education and different ways of communicating with people. And one of the big themes that you see across that is eventually you need some autonomy from that individual. You know, you're trying to have those individuals be able to, or the group as a whole, be able to be semi-self-sufficient. You know what I mean? And you're just there to tweak and tidy and give a bit of direction. Just finally, to wrap up, what advice would you give to any young person wanting to get into physiotherapy, particularly in professional sport? What tips would you pass on to them? So yeah, I think the key things are like
there's going to be boxes that you have to tick, I guess, at an A level and all these things to get towards uni, and so I won't go too far into them. But the main things from if you're lucky enough to get onto a physio course and you wanted to study, and you really think that sport and MSK is the area of physiotherapy that you want to work in, like physio is quite broad ranging, and there's a lot of really good physios doing wide ranging stuff across like general healthcare. But if you think that like the care of like musculoskeletal problems and injuries is the thing for you, like some of that I always fall back to is my understanding of like anatomy and biomechanics, and it's something that you'll study early in your study, like usually in your first year, and it's easy to fall away from. But I think that it's a bit of a North Star sort of thing, if that's the best way of putting it. Like it'll always bring you back home, and it'll always like ground you in what you need to do. Like all of your assessment, all of your rehabilitation from an MSK point of view is guided by your understanding of the anatomy, and that can go really complex to how does a muscle change during rehabilitation, or as basic as where's the muscle, what does it do. So I think that my advice to any young physios studying and that want to get into this environment is really make sure that you nail sort of that understanding of anatomy and pathology, and then just keep chancing your arm, put yourself out there as often as you can, and then opportunities arise. Great advice there. Thanks, Dave, for joining us on this episode of the Q&A edition of the Leeds Rhinos podcast. Don't forget to send in your questions, info@therhinos.co.uk. We'll be back on Monday, hopefully to review a fine performance against Castleford Tigers here at AMT Headingley on Sunday afternoon. Make sure you come down and give the boys your support. It's going to be a great day. Really pleased to say that Lindsay Burrow will be joining us at the stadium. Lindsay's signing copies of her new book, Take Care, which has come out this week. So get down and see Lindsay and get a copy of that book. It'll be in the AMT East Stand Cafe Bar. Until then, have a great week. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you soon.